Welcome everybody to the DraftPlan meeting for the Colorado River Headwaters Connectivity Project located in Grand County, Colorado. We appreciate your attendance both in person and virtually and look forward to hearing any comments you may have regarding this project. During the presentation today, we will be introducing the full project team helping develop this project, providing background on the Plan EA and the purpose of this meeting, introducing issues identified within the proposed Windy Gap watershed and alternative measures developed to address those issues. Also providing a summary of the environmental consequences for the preferred alternative, present project costs, and review the remaining project schedule prior to the start of construction. After this presentation is complete, we will open up the meeting to a question and answer session. You have already heard a couple of the team members introduce themselves and their involvement in the project. Now I will review the full project team. NRCS Colorado is the lead federal agency providing partial funding support to the sponsors. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is a cooperating federal agency on the Plan EA as they will issue a permit under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act for work in waters of the U.S. and wetlands. The project sponsors are the local proponents and include Trout Unlimited, Northern Water, and Grand County. AECOM is providing engineering services and Adaptive Environmental Planning is providing National Environmental Policy Act support, will be here and referred to as NEPA for short, through the preparation of the draft and final Plan EA documents. Okay, now that the formalities are out of the way, let's start discussing the project details. The project is located to the west of the town of Granby in Grand County, Colorado. There are 4 areas associated with this project as shown on the vicinity map. The main project area resides in Area 1, which contains Windy Gap Dam and Reservoir. Areas 2, 3, and 4 are sites that will be used for borrowed materials such as clay, gravel, and rock to construct the preferred alternative, as I will discuss shortly in this presentation. In order for the project to be eligible for NRCS funding, a NRCS watershed boundary must be developed to identify the area that improvements may be made or the area that may experience benefits from project actions. The proposed Windy Gap watershed boundary was developed by NRCS as shown on the current map and is represented by the blue line, which consists of approximately 242,000 acres of land. Anyone who is not familiar with NRCS or the NEPA process may have some questions at this point, such as, what is a Plan EA? Why are we writing a Plan EA? And what is the purpose of this draft Plan EA meeting? Our job is to inform you as much as possible about this process, and hopefully this presentation will answer your questions. If not, please contact the project team with any additional questions you may have after this presentation. Since project actions are being funded partially by the NRCS, the federal government, through the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act, also referred to as PL 83-566, an environmental analysis is required to comply with federal regulations. These federal regulations include NEPA and the Council on Environmental Quality Regulations. NRCS complies with these regulations in the form of a watershed plan and environmental assessment. Since that is a mouthful of words, we simply refer to it as Plan EA for short. A draft Plan EA has been prepared and is currently out for public review and comment. The purpose of this meeting is to provide all interested parties, both agency and public, information on alternatives analyzed in the draft Plan EA, present the results of the environmental assessment, answer questions you may have, and encourage interested parties to submit comments on the draft Plan EA. Now that the policy information has been discussed, we can get into the details of the project. So grab your popcorn and sit back and relax while we walk through the project details. Early in the planning process, a purpose and need statement was developed for the project. In this statement, the purpose is the objective or objectives that the project is intended to meet, and the need drives its purpose. Specifically for the Colorado River Headwaters Connectivity Project, the purpose is to provide watershed protection to the Windy Gap watershed by implementing ecosystem restoration measures that would improve water quality, enhance aquatic habitat, and improve recreation resources by connecting the Colorado and Fraser Rivers upstream and downstream of Windy Gap Reservoir while maintaining the current water supply function of Windy Gap Dam. There is a need to provide connectivity for aquatic life and fish passage in the Colorado and Fraser rivers, moderate elevated stream temperatures, improve sediment transport, enhance riparian and stream habitat, and allow public recreation access. In order to meet the purpose and need, the existing conditions of the project area were thoroughly assessed. This assessment consisted of the existing infrastructure as shown on the map. The main components consist of Windy Gap Dam embankment, principal spillway, the pumping plant, Windy Gap Reservoir, and the Fraser River Weir. The existing condition assessment identified that Windy Gap Dam and Reservoir block and impede aquatic life passage upstream in the Colorado River. The reservoir reduces coarse sediment transport downstream that is conducive for aquatic species habitat and has resulted in stream bed armoring. The reservoir has disrupted normal stream flow through the creation of a slack water environment, resulting in aquatic habitat degradation and increased water temperatures. The existing condition assessment also identified that the Fraser River Weir blocks and/or impedes aquatic life passage upstream in the Fraser River. A detailed analysis of the project area existing conditions, also referred to as the affected environment, is located in Section 4 of the DraftPlan EA. In order to meet the project purpose and need, multiple alternatives were developed. Many of these alternatives were eliminated from detailed study due to infeasibility, logistics, exorbitant costs, not meeting the purpose and need, or other critical factors. Please refer to Section 5.4 in the DraftPlan EA for detailed information on alternatives eliminated from detailed study. Alternatives considered for detailed study in the Plan EA are discussed in Section 5.5 and consist of a no-action alternative and one action alternative that meets the purpose and need for the project. The no-action alternative consists of not modifying any components of Windy Gap Reservoir or Fraser River Weir. Operations and maintenance for the pump storage and dam would continue unchanged. Excavation or dredging of the reservoir would be required to remove approximately 2 acre-feet of sediment annually to maintain current pumping operations for the life of the project. The action alternative presented in the DraftPlan EA is also the preferred alternative for the project. Specific ecosystem restoration measures that would be implemented in Area 1 include dam modifications, construction of a connectivity channel, and modifications to the Fraser River Weir. Project measures in Areas 2, 3, and 4 consist of borrowing clay, gravel, and rock to construct the alternative measures outlined in Area 1. Modifications to the dam would be required to separate the reservoir from the connectivity channel. Prior to the start of construction, the reservoir would be lowered so that work would occur on the dry. A portion of the western dam embankment would be removed while the southern alignment would remain in place. A new dam embankment would be installed through the center of the existing reservoir and would match the existing dam embankment. A new overflow spillway would be installed on the upstream portion of the embankment, which would be activated only during flood events. Since the reservoir surface area is decreased, the principal spillway low block would be raised by 1 foot to match the existing high block elevation. A new diversion structure would be installed at the upstream end of the embankment near Highway 40, which would control water flowing into the reservoir. The new connectivity channel entrance would be stabilized with a rock control section and sheet pile installed below the channel surface. A new adjustable gate would be installed along the Colorado River, which could be lowered to allow flow into the reservoir during operations or flood events. A new access road would be constructed off of Highway 40 and a vehicle bridge installed over the diversion structure to allow for operations and maintenance access. A new connectivity channel would be constructed in the area between the old and new dam embankments. This new channel would function as a typical stream channel with associated side channels and floodplain features incorporated into the design. As part of the channel construction, a new riparian corridor would be reconstructed with wetland, riparian, and upland vegetative plants. The existing banks at the downstream outlet would be stabilized to prevent erosion. Overall, the connectivity channel will result in a net increase of 5,580 feet of stream channel, net increase of 18.28 acres of wetland, and net increase of 19 acres of riparian habitat. The existing conditions of the proposed connectivity channel alignment consist of three different types of cover. Upstream of the reservoir contains open wetland and upland meadows. The reservoir contains solely open water, and downstream of the reservoir contains a mixture of wetland and upland shrubland. The proposed conditions in the connectivity channel combine the existing conditions, excluding the open water reservoir, into a healthy functioning riparian corridor. The picture shown is an example of the Colorado River upstream of the reservoir that has not experienced the degradation from the installation of the dam as previously discussed. Modifications to the dam embankment and construction of the connectivity channel are anticipated to create a thriving riparian corridor containing stream channel, wetland, and upland habitat. This new area is expected to become excellent habitat for fish and wildlife. Northern Water, who is the landowner, is proposing to open this area for public recreation in 2 phases. The area shown in dark pink adjacent to the reservoir will be open for public recreation after construction completion. The operations and maintenance access road off of Highway 40 would be open for public access. Note, the official opening for public recreation will depend on the success of vegetation establishment and may occur 1 or 2 years after construction completion. The reason for this delay is to ensure that vegetation has had sufficient time to become established before recreation activities would start that may disturb vegetation along the new connectivity channel. The area shown in light pink downstream of the dam would be open for public recreation access 10 years after construction completion. The existing wildlife viewing area on the northern side of the reservoir would be open to the public during and post-construction, and there are no modifications proposed for this area. Measures are also proposed for the Fraser River Weir, which currently blocks and impedes aquatic life passage. Measures would be installed to provide upstream aquatic life passage through the installation of 2 rock weir structures downstream of the existing weir and regrading the channel bottom. The existing weir would be left in place and flow monitoring of the Fraser River would still be maintained. In addition, a new vehicle crossing would be installed in the bottom of the channel for operations and maintenance activities, as there is not a crossing currently at this location. Borrow areas to support construction of measures in Area 1 are shown on the map. Areas 2 and 3 consist of borrow sites for clay, and approximately 20 acres within each of these areas would be mined for clay. Excess suitable materials from the construction activities in Area 1 may be deposited in these borrow sites after the clay has been mined to restore the ground to match the surrounding topography. The areas hatched in black are proposed for mining, and ground disturbing activities would avoid sensitive resource areas such as wetlands, waters, and cultural resources. Area 4 consists of existing borrow sites for gravel and rock, and no new mining would occur outside of the current limits of these areas. Project measures that I just discussed constitute the preferred alternative. The next 5 slides analyze the preferred alternative impact on the environmental resources and summarize the environmental consequences section in the DraftPlan EA. Those of you interested in the detailed descriptions, please refer to the Plan EA section 6.0 Environmental Consequences. For purposes of this Plan EA, short-term refers to during construction and shortly after, which is about 2 years, while long-term refers to the evaluated life of the project, which is from construction completion to 100 years. There is a lot of information in the following slides, so please bear with me as I explain the environmental consequences of the project. I will start with the adverse short-term impacts anticipated during construction. There will be a temporary increase in upland erosion on disturbed land. These impacts will be offset by the installation of best management practices, herein referred to as BMPs, to reduce erosion potential until ground cover is established. There will be a temporary increase in water turbidity discharged from the project. Impacts will be offset by the installation of BMPs in order to reduce turbid water discharges. Habitat will be temporarily disturbed, including water, wetland, riparian, stream, and upland. These impacts will be offset by restoration of disturbed areas after construction and the creation of new habitat. There will be a temporary increase in emissions and fugitive dust from construction traffic. These impacts will be offset by complying with air quality standards as well as the installation of BMPs. There is an increased potential for the establishment of noxious weeds and invasive plants in the disturbed portion of the project. Impacts will be offset by active eradication in the construction work areas. Terrestrial species will be temporarily displaced. However, these impacts will be offset by pre-construction surveys, avoidance measures for migratory birds, and the availability of abundant surrounding habitat. There will be an increase in construction noise, but these impacts will be offset by complying with noise standards and the installation of BMPs. There will be a decrease of visual quality within the disturbed area during construction from disturbed ground and construction equipment. These impacts were temporary and will be offset by the restoration of these disturbed areas after construction completion. The adverse long-term impacts from the project is not as long of a list as the short-term impacts, so this slide should go pretty quickly. There will be a reduction of 33.8 acres of open water associated with the reservoir. This reduction impact will be offset by the construction of the connectivity channel, which establishes a new riparian corridor. There will also be the increased potential for the establishment of noxious weeds and invasive plants naturally and as well by recreationists bringing them on site. These impacts will be offset by the revegetation of the project area, as well as the development and implementation of a post-construction rehabilitation plan. Recreationists will be held accountable to follow the rules and requirements established by the state for invasive species. Most beneficial impacts from implementation of the preferred alternative are long-term, so the short-term impacts is the shortest list of impacts for the project and consists of minor benefits to socioeconomic conditions from additional employment requirements for construction. This is anticipated to be beneficial to the immediate area surrounding the project. The beneficial long-term impacts for the preferred alternative are the longest list of impacts, and this is a good thing for the restoration of this ecosystem. Specific beneficial impacts include a reduction of sedimentation into Windy Gap Reservoir and the reestablishment of coarse sediment transport downstream, alleviating gravel depletion and streambed armoring. There will be a reduction of water temperature due to decreased water detention times in the reservoir. There will be a net increase of 5,580 feet of stream through the construction of the new connectivity channel. There will be a net increase of 18.28 acres of wetlands associated with the new connectivity channel. There will be a net increase of 19 acres of riparian area associated with the new connectivity channel. And there will be benefits to aquatic species through improved aquatic habitat and by providing connectivity for aquatic life passage in the Colorado River. This slide is a continuation of the beneficial long-term impacts for the preferred alternative. Specific impacts include benefits to terrestrial species by the reestablishment of a riparian corridor for species movement, cover, and connectivity to the upstream and downstream riparian corridors. Benefits to socioeconomic conditions from an increase in recreation usage and associated spending in the local area, and an increase of 99.5 acres of land and 7,050 feet of stream channel for public recreation in the new connectivity channel. 10 years after construction, an additional 62.2 acres of land and 5,300 feet of stream channel would be open for public recreation downstream of the dam as well. Project costs for the preferred alternative are depicted in the table on this slide. NRCS is providing funding for a portion of the preferred alternative measures at an amount of approximately $14.6 million. The remaining funds are being provided by the sponsors at an amount of approximately $12.5 million for a total project cost of approximately $27 million. Out of the $27 million total project installation cost, approximately $22.6 million is solely for construction. The remaining $4.4 million includes project environmental, engineering, permitting, and administrative costs. The NRCS funding process is broken into 3 phases: planning, design, and construction. We are currently in the planning phase, and the draft Plan A comment period ends on March 10, 2022. So please submit any comments before that closing date. As of right now, the project team is anticipating issuing the final Plan A and finding of no significant impact in April 2022. After the planning process is complete, the design can be finalized, and this is anticipated to occur in May of 2022. Construction may begin after the design is complete and is anticipated to occur from May through November over the course of 2 years, which are 2022 and 2023. Detailed information on the alternatives, environmental impacts, costs, and economic analysis can be reviewed in the Draft Plan A document, which is available for download on the NRCS website. We encourage interested parties to submit comments for the Draft Plan A, which can be sent by email to windygap@adaptiveenviro.com, mailed to Adaptive Environmental Planning, or give me, Greg Allington, a call on the phone. The comment period is open through March 10, 2022, so please send any comments by that date to be included in the public record. We appreciate your interest in this project and look forward to hearing from you. We will now end the presentation and open up the meeting for a question and answer session. Thank you.